Welcome to the Andrew Price Podcast, the podcast for people like you, maybe, who want to learn the habits, techniques, and tricks to become a better artist. Essentially all the stuff that doesn't fit in a tutorial that really makes up most of your life. How to stay motivated, how to, not burn out, all that other good stuff. Because this episode is going to be a Q&A, good old-fashioned Q&A. People send in a random question that I never would have guessed, which is why I ask you to send them in, because then I can answer them, and we can have an actual thing that people are interested in. So you can do that at blenderguru.com/podcast question. It must be a video, though. So all you got to do, pull out your smartphone, selfie mode, record your video, and then upload it to that place. It's pretty easy. So do that, and then we can talk. Months later, one-sided, me talking to as if you were here, but, you might have forgotten you even asked the question by then. Some people send in a question, and then I put it in a folder, and I try to categorize them by type so that I can do an episode on that, so don't feel bad if it's not immediately featured. But anyway, this is my office, by the way, which I said I was going to spruce it up to make it more of a lively podcast space. This is what I got. It's a white-walled office with a donut poster behind me, and that's what you get. I was thinking of doing, because I was like, what sort of decorations can you do for a set, whatever. And it's just all LED lights and colored things in the background. And that's about it. That seems to be what every YouTuber is doing these days. And I thought, I can't in all integrity do that. So this is it. It's just a little donut poster. I was thinking of putting a price tag, $1 million underneath it, as sort of, what The Secret says, you got to project what it is that you want, right? So someone will buy that for $1 million one day. That's what you have to tell yourself, and then it will happen. It does actually work, by the way. That stuff, the visualization, goal visualization, it gets a lot of crap because, I think deservedly so, because of that doco? Was it a documentary? They called it a movie, but that's the loosest definition for a movie I've ever heard. Because they were like, if you just visualize anything, it can happen. You visualize you getting a parking space, and there's a parking space available for you. And what I've learned, because the biggest criticism for that is prisoners should be able to visualize themselves getting out of prison, right? If that works. It doesn't work, of course. What I've learned is it has to be something that you can directly influence. Because when you're visualizing something, a goal, that is then changing your behavior in order to obtain that goal. It's really simple. It's not like this mystical, it goes out into space and the universe responds and all that kind of stuff. It's it's you visualize yourself living in a nice house, and then after a while you're looking at your own crappy house, and you're like, I got to get off my butt and work, or else I'm not going to get that fancy house. That's mostly what it's about. It does work. I did it years ago. I had a vision board up and everything. I had one on the Apple TV as a screensaver of things I wanted. Sounds so lame, but and then I forgot about it. And then a couple of years later or something, we plugged the Apple TV back in, and we were playing it. And then it was I actually own that car. It wasn't that fancy, by the way. It was a Nissan Altima, but it was my ideal car at the time. And it was I hadn't forgotten it was even on my list. But then moved to Australia, got married, and then we bought that exact car that I wanted. And I think that was it. I don't know. I haven't got the house, that's for sure. I'm still living in this, staying out of this little shack that I'm in currently, this little office space, demountable. This, by the way, I got to give a shout out so that it is a tax write-off. This is a non-alcoholic alcohol, right? Which I want to shout out because it's awesome, but also it's an Australian company, and that's rare. It's rare that Australia produces rocket ships, but this is one of them. It's called Lyre, Lyre, and it was actually started by one of the advisors that I hired for Polygon, very expensive advisor. You got to choose them wisely. This was like $5,000 a month plus equity. But anyways, it was like an advisor for Polygon. He's this millionaire who's figured out a lot of stuff, and he's smart and whatever. And in one of the sessions, he was like, yeah, I'm a director on a company called Lyre, and they make non-alcoholic alcohol. And I said, well, that sounds dumb. Good luck with it. to few greater words, but basically that was it. And he was explaining like, there's like, what is it? Millennials today, they're not drinking. So like all the alcohol prices and revenue is down worldwide, but non-alcoholic things are going up. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know too many millennials that don't drink. And he said, yeah, and there's also like this Muslim, population, billions of people worldwide that can't drink as well. And I was like, yeah, I don't buy it. But anyways, good luck with it. That thing is a rocket ship. Yeah, they make it out of Melbourne, and then it's like going all over the world. And it's just, last time I spoke to him, he said they were growing 100%, like month on month or something. It can't be 100%, maybe 50%. I don't know. Either way, an insane growth. And now they want to get they're getting offers to be bought out by like all these top alcohol companies in the world, because they're like, yeah, they're all realizing that no one's buying alcohol anymore, apparently. Well, I'm one of them. I mean, it's a stupid thing to say, but like, I don't actually drink. I haven't had an actual alcoholic drink in like a year. And then I was like, I'll give it a shot. And it tastes like gin and tonic. Like, this is a gin and tonic mix. And to the point that you feel like a placebo. Like, you feel drunk. So you could totally go to like a party of like a teenager's party and tell them it's real gin and tonic and watch them get drunk. And then later on at the end, tell them it's all fake. Anyways, let's get to the chase, guys. We are going to do Q&A. So let's pull up this first question by Alex.
Hi Andrew, it's Alex here from England. Big fan of Blender and obviously Blender Guru. So my question I thought of while I was playing with geometry nodes for the first time, and I realized...
By the way, can I say, look like every kid I've ever seen on TikTok. Which is nothing, doesn't say anything about you, except that just everyone on TikTok looks like you. It's got the wavy hair, you look about 17, and the hoodie. It's the TikTok uniform.
That actually, all the skills I developed in particle systems are probably going to be redundant quite soon. So my question is, as CGI artists, how do we deal with the redundancy of technical skills that we've developed due to the progression of technology? Other artists don't have to deal with it, like painters or sketchers. So I'd be really curious to hear your opinion.
Okay, so Alex, particles that we just learned for Blender, it's now being made redundant for geometry nodes. And you are right to notice that the technology that we spent time and effort learning can be made redundant at any time. I would say, though, that it's not just 3D. There is almost no career today whereby you can get by with just not learning anything. Just learning what you learned in school and then doing it for the rest of your career. I don't know if that time has ever existed. I mean, obviously things are rapidly, improving now, to the point that like by the time a workflow has been firmly adopted in an industry, there's already like 2 or 3 better workflows behind it that's already being tested by the people on the bleeding edge. And that's going to override the stuff that you're learning now, within like a year or something, right? So, and that, they say that time frame is going to get smaller and smaller, right? It's just the world we live in, and you just have to accept that. The thing is like the new methods, well, first of all, you can keep using the old methods, right? Like in particle case, for Blender, you can keep using it, right? But the reason you won't is that there's a bunch of limitations that come with the old method, right? And so you want to learn geometry nodes because you know that the old method has got issues, it's got constraints. Particles are just terrible way to instant things in Blender. It's just way too settings. It gives me a headache. It's a nightmare. Geometry nodes, it's actually way better. But anyways, to your point, how do you deal with that? How do you reconcile that feeling that you're just like, oh God, it's another thing I have to learn, right? So I think that there's really 3 types of people when it comes to this sort of thing. So the first type of person is the one that they stick to what they know, right? And generally these people, they're career days are very limited, right? Because as I said, you just can't get by without it. Now you mentioned that like a 2D artist, they don't have to worry about that. They can just keep doing what they do. Well, that's actually not true. Like concept artists have to learn 3D now, right? There's almost no concept artist working today that is doing it the old-fashioned way, really, which is just 2D, because it takes way too long for perspective to block out a scene, get the right lighting, all that kind of thing. And then when the boss says like, hey, can you change the lighting or do this kind of thing, move the camera angle, they got to spend like weeks or another day repainting the entire thing from a different angle. This was explained by Jaume Jurubey in his Blender speech, right? So they all have to learn 3D now. So even 2D artists and, the old school Disney animators that were on the paper, traditional ink and whatever, well, they're all outdated as well, right? There's very, very few people that can be this person, this just sticking to what you know. The second type of person is the one that's on the cutting edge. They always download the absolute latest daily build of Blender. They're trying out the alpha versions of software that haven't even been publicly released yet. They're experimenting with, this machine learning technology. These types of people are really fun to talk to at parties and just pick their brain and go like, what's a cool thing what do you think is going to be the next thing? And they'll just tell you, and it's fun. However, because there is a huge time cost with learning anything new, they rarely get to accomplish anything great. It's hard to do anything worthwhile in terms of like a great project or a short film or something like that when you're constantly trying out new software, new renderers, new algorithms, new tools, just like picking them apart constantly. There is a big time waste there that can subtract from something else. So there's a downside to that. And the third type of person is the one that I would recommend, because it's what I do personally, but I really do think it's the best way, and that's to focus on what you know currently and just stick to that until you hit limitations and you are aware that a new technique, software, technology, whatever it is, solves that. So perfect case, particles, right? You can stick to using particles if you already know it. Why learn something new? However, if you find a point that the rotation of these objects, it's really annoying to get them to match the rotation. It's also hard to get the, clumping effect of like textures, because the textures are all like weird in particle noise. It's very hard to figure out. It's also hard to like reference multiple objects. It's hard to, build out systems that will function across this thing. Then you realize I got to learn something new. What's a better solution? Geometry nodes, right? And, let the other people be the guinea pigs, and you'll hear on the peripheral, provided you're part of, the art community in some way. You'll hear about it on ArtStation. You'll hear about it on various websites. You might hear about it on my newsletter, by the way, blenderguru.com/thisweekin3D. Every week I figure out all that stuff. I browse the sites. I spend a couple of hours just learning the latest things. And then I put the best stuff in a newsletter. It's very short to read, and it just sort of keeps you abreast of that. So if you want that, blenderguru.com/thisweekin3D. And I promise that I didn't just answer this question just so that I could shout that out, but I do think it is bizarrely relevant for once. But yeah, that's what I think it is. It's like, yeah, it's annoying, when you've just learned a new thing, and then it's like, oh, that tool is now outdated. But it's not. I mean, it takes a while before the developers of a tool will completely kill it, right? It's usually like a couple of years at least. So you can keep doing it the old way. It's just you don't want to anymore, right? Because the new way is usually far better. There's also new tutorials for it. People are able to achieve new and greater things to it. So you do want to use the new way. It's just you have to, figure out, is it worth dropping it to learn the new method? And generally, if you're stuck in a package like Blender or Houdini or whatever it is that you're stuck in, and there's the new thing that's the new workflow, yeah, it makes sense to jump on it, because you just sort of you're kicking the can down the road. You're going to have to learn it at some point. Why not pull the trigger and do it now? So anyway, that's my point. I'd say stick to what you know and keep doing it so that you can focus on what you want to be, which is a great artist. But be aware of the limitations of your current tools, and then adopt the new ones when you know they exist. All right, next question. This one comes from Rashid.
Hey Andrew, just a quick question. Wanted to ask you, if you have any tips about, how to avoid that feeling when, you want to do something, in this case in Blender, but you're constantly failing at doing little things and sort of artistic block, you can say, which you're not able to overcome. I have learned Blender for about 9 or 10 months now, but it's just a point that I'm not able to think of something new. I don't know what to do, and I think that I'm slowly losing interest. It would be very helpful, if you could tell me some tips in how to overcome such feelings. Yeah, that's it.
Very good question, Rashid. You have definitely you've coined what anybody who is a beginner at anything on their path to mastery, really. And that's the difference between the masters of today and the people who gave up, is that they stuck through, right? They pushed through those barriers and weathered the storm on the way to mastery. So it's completely normal. That's all I would say. So I would have 5 steps, right, for anyone who deals with this, because it's so common. Because I think ultimately what it really it's like rooted in just not knowing where you're going and feeling like you're treading water, just over the same problems, and you feel like you're not getting anywhere, right? And I think that these 5 steps will rectify that. So it's 5 steps for anyone who wants to improve, get better and faster at things. So the first thing is to establish a North Star. First step, establish a North Star. And this is where you figure out what it is that you want. Why are you learning this thing? What do you actually want to achieve? And that might sound like so basic. Most people, they think they know what they want, but it's usually not just one thing. It's like multiple things. They want to do characters. They also really like environments. And the simulation stuff is so fun. And I'd like to learn animation one day. And they just sort of hopping from one tutorial and topic to the other. And it takes, could take a couple of years to master any of those things. So of course they're not able to get anywhere. They're not getting the results that they want, right? So establishing what it is that you want, what really excites you, and put it somewhere that you can reference later on. And that's the important thing. So I recommend starting a Pinterest board. If you like Pinterest, it's not just for wedding cakes. There's actually some really cool stuff on there. You can find related images. It's great. Or like a pure ref board. It just has to be something that you can reference locally. And don't worry about putting the right thing on there or the wrong thing. Just start filling it with stuff that speaks to you, that lights a fire under you, and call it your personal inspiration board, or something like that. Or in my wife's case, she called it the wannabe board. Right? She had people that fitness people that she wanted to be like, called the wannabe board. But anyways, have that, okay? And the second thing is, I would recommend having a daily practice time. I know I've harped about this before, that, daily practice is, it's what counts, blah, blah, blah. The reason this matters is what I'm talking about is setting a slot in your day whereby you do at least, preferably, a minimum of 1 hour of practice, and sticking to that every single day, so that at noon or 5 p.m. or whatever it is, you're gonna do that hour, okay? And the reason for that is that we think that we're gonna find time, but when you don't find time, other things find you, right? You think, I'll have time to practice on the weekend, right? Well, family commitments come up, or your friends, they want to go hiking and you go with them. Well, you didn't practice that week. And then the next week, something else comes along. You think, I'll get to it after that. So we keep imagining we're going to have these large blocks of time where we're going to be able to sit down and, really smash through it. We never do, right? So a lot of people just go through life thinking I'm going to find this time sometime where there's nothing else. There's no distractions. Nobody needs me. I'm just going to be able to just do the thing and practice my hobby. It doesn't happen. You have to set that time, and an hour a day, it adds up. It's really, really effective. The other reason that I recommend it is that if you're not revisiting something every single day, what you learned previously is slowly drifting away in memory, right? So if you, practice Blender once every other week, what you find is you open Blender and you go, where's where's layers? And then you have to like Google layers, and you find out, oh, that's right, it's collections. And then you remember, like, yeah, I remember last time I was practicing, I had the same question, and I had to Google it and figure out that thing. And then you're like, what's the button for the thing? Oh, what's the button for the da-da-da? That's right. That's right, it's that thing. And you end up spending most of your practice session just relearning the same things that you forgot in the previous session. So that's why having this daily time slot where you know you're going to be able to sit down and do at least an hour a day, that'll add up like you wouldn't believe. And you'll be able to look back and go, whoa, I did a lot in a week. It's like, yeah, because you did 7 hours, and you very rarely get 7 hours in a week where you previously practiced. So it really matters. Number 3, deconstruct the skills to achieve your North Star. So what I mean by this is, to achieve anything, it's made up of many skills, right? Like people that are good at characters don't have a character skill. They are good at multiple skills that are stacked on top of each other that are important to create a good character, right? They need to know anatomy. So anatomy is one module. They need to know sculpting, right? Because they're making sculpting and 3D stuff. They have to know all about that, how the brushes work, what brush does what, retopology, lighting, materials, posing, gesture, all these little things. And you'll pick this up. You'll learn it sort of after about the first month of trying to do something. You'll hear people in tutorials mention this skill or that skill, or you'll know that, yeah, this is an important thing. And you'll just sort of pick that up. You want to deconstruct that and break it down, okay? And list it, that these are the things that I have to get good at one by one, okay? And this is especially important for the 4th thing, which is focus on one thing at a time. This is something that it's painful to hear, because final pieces are so much fun. It's so fun to go like, I'm going to build a scene with a man and a spaceman and a full scene, and it's going to have some planets and stuff in the background and a spaceship and all that kind of thing. And you do it, and it takes months, and you're wasting all this time, and then you finish it, and it just looks average, right? At the end of it, you don't know what the problem is. You don't know why it looks average. You know that it doesn't look as good as the other stuff that you've seen, okay? And the reason for that is that it's like listening to 5 pieces of music at the same time and trying to hear what the flaws are, okay? An expert might be able to look at it and spot what the flaws are, but you as a beginner, it's impossible. It's far too much visual information in this case for you to actually distill what it is that you've got wrong. You don't know that the reason that the character looks weird is because the pose is off. You don't know that the reason that the ground, the environment looks fake is that you haven't figured out materials yet. You don't know why it just feels fake and stylized and weird. Is like you've got textures in some places and no textures in others. You don't know that the design is a thing. So it's all just kind of flat, boring shapes, and it's not really hitting any visual, emotion from people that watch it. You don't know all these things because you haven't broken it down and worked on each skill individually. So as an example, when I was learning 2D, I was doing these full pieces, right? And I was doing these faces, and I'd spend, I'd sketch the face, I'd do the thing, then I'd do the shading, and it was a lot of shade the thing, and then go, oh, that's yucky, and then paint over, and then go, oh, that's yucky too, and then redo it and restructure it and move things around with the Liquify tool and spend hours on this thing, finish it, and go, oh. Well, that was demotivating because it still sucks, and I don't know why it sucks, right? And then I realized much later on that when I was forced to do the most basic thing in perspective, which is let's say a cube, right? I know how to draw a cube. Okay, I drew the cube. And then compare it with reference of what the actual cube looks like with that angle of this thing. Oh, the lines don't match at all, okay? So this is the 5th thing that we sort of stumble into, which is building a feedback loop, okay? The problem with a final piece is that the feedback loop is so long, okay? It could take ages to make a full scene, a full final image. And even if you were able to figure out what the problems were, at the end of it, it took way too long to get there, okay? Whereas if you had distilled it down to materials, okay, rather than a full environment, materials. I need to learn materials. And you had tried to copy a photograph of a material, right? I don't know, like this bottle, okay? What's it called? Anodized? Not anodized. Anisotropic shaders, right? You would learn about like that kind of thing. You take a photograph of an object, a coffee cup or something, and try to replicate just that thing. It's so basic and it feels so boring, and you know that the final image you're not going to be able to post on Facebook and Instagram and get those gorgeous likes that you so desire. So it feels so stupid and like a waste of time. But if you did that, you would learn like, oh, I actually don't know why the coffee cup looks the way it does. Like, I don't know, like, why is the light, like, I can't get that shiny reflection. And then you realize like reflection is driven not just by the, you know, the roughness value of the thing, it's also driven by the light itself, which has, you know, a radius to it, right? So small things will make a sharper reflection, all these sort of things. And oh, what else is it? It's still not right. It doesn't have that kind of like milky feeling like the thing. And that's like, oh, well, ceramic has a very small amount of subsurface scattering with bright enough light when you're close enough. So you learn all these little things, little tiny tips and tricks, and then you've got like a concrete foundation of how materials work. And that's going to come in handy when you do that spaceman standing in an environment scene. You're going to be able to get those materials just right. But you would learn that so quickly from one session on materials, whereas it could take a couple of months to do the full scene, and there would be so much visual noise at the end of it, you might not even tell what the problem was. Okay, so those are my 5 tips, 5 steps. Find a North Star, figure out what excites you, and then you can come back to it later on to help you go in the right direction. Number 2, set a daily practice time slot, a time in the day so that you can just practice this time every single day. Number 3, deconstruct the skills required in order to achieve your North Star, which is very important for the next thing, which is practice and focus on one thing at a time, which will help you for step number 5, which is to have a fast feedback loop so that you can tell when you've made something, when you've made a mistake, right? There are many ways to get a feedback loop, by the way. A mentor is a great way because they know everything and they can go, yeah, that's wrong, do this, this, and this. But they're also expensive, right? And you also don't need one at the start. You can get the same feedback loop, if not better and faster, with just a photo, because a photo is ground truth and you're replicating a photo. And it's free. It's free. It's a free mentor sitting over your shoulder that not enough people are taking advantage of. Copy the photo 1-to-1, bam, you got it, right? If it's stylized stuff you want to do and like this kind of style, you can also take somebody else's artist drawing and that becomes your ground truth that you're trying to replicate. That at the end of it, you put it over the top and go, oh, it's off, right? Feedback loop. So that's what that is all about. I know that was like a detour from your question, which was about like, you feel like you're not getting anywhere in Blender and you struggle to do even small things. But, you know, I would imagine that a lot of what I just mentioned is applicable because it's all like, it's a little problem, but yeah, it's like fundamentally rooted in some things that you've got to figure out and stick to it. So hope that helped. All right. Before we get to the next question, we have our sponsor, Polygon, which is my company. Me handing myself a medal. So Polygon is a website of assets, materials, models, brushes, HDRs that I have vetted as high quality. They're created by my team who they figure out all the hard stuff and figure out the best way to create photo scan stuff so it's like got an accurate like point something millimeter amount of detail and displacement. We figure all that stuff out, standardize it so that you can just drag it into Blender or any 3D software package that you use, because we support them all and all the renderers, major ones. We figure that out so that you can just make better images faster. You can build scenes, you can do things faster and create stuff that speaks to people, right? That's what Polygon is about. So POLIIGON.com. We just released a new batch of PhotoScan grounds that are like 3x3 meters. So they like, you know, you can use them over large surfaces. They're like up to 8K. We've also got these like lovely beach rocks that we scanned recently as well. We've also got like acoustic panel, the stuff that's really popular for offices around the world. So ArcViz people will love it. But yeah, a bunch of stuff, and like dark mode is on the way as well. A little sneak preview of something to come very soon. We're going to have like way better previews on the site in dark mode, and things are things are really rapidly unrolling at Polygon. So Polygon, POLIIGON.com is where you can sign up and make better renders faster. Okay, question from Toby.
Andrew, I'm Toby from Germany. And first I want to thank you for your awesome free tutorials, because I made rapid progress with them. And I'm looking forward each and every morning to work on my 1 hour per day in Blender. And it is really something I love. I started on January 4th. And even though I love it, I love doing it, I know there will be times where people try to put their negative influence on you. Saying things like, you can't do this, you are not professional, you must invest time, you're too old, you're too young. And my question to you is, how do you protect yourself, shield yourself against the negative influence of other people who are obviously not supportive with whatever you're trying to achieve? Yeah.
That is a very good question, Toby. What do you say to a negative family member or friend who is trying to put you down and say that you can't be an artist, you can't do it, you're too old, you're too young, whatever reasons they might give? Now, as fun and entertaining as it would be for me to say, F the haters, give them the old bird and you show them, right? As entertaining as that is, because it's kind of like it's empowering and all that kind of thing, I think that you have to first of all distinguish between people that want to bring you down versus people that actually have your best interests at heart, because on the surface they can sound the same. So, for example, let's say my daughter, who is 3 at the moment, but let's say when she gets older, that she wants to move to LA to become an actor in movies, right? I would support her no matter what she did, of course, but I would also want to make sure that she knows that it is very, 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 very unlikely that she will succeed. Okay? Not because I don't think she's beautiful, she's gorgeous, but it is a highly competitive industry whereby you could be talented, you could be attractive, you could have all the right things, and you could still not succeed because there's a lot of luck, there's a lot of chance, it's networking, it's a bunch of random factors, and you could waste a couple of decades of your life pursuing something that just doesn't work. So if she presented me with this idea, I would want to make sure that no one has pulled the wool over her eyes to say that this is a sure thing, because it's absolutely not. It is a really risky career move that could lead to some sad times in the future, okay? And I think a lot of parents are like that, right? My mom was certainly one of them. I want to work in a studio kind of thing. You don't have the skills. You got to get a real job. That's what she said to me. You got to get a real job. And she was right. Being an artist is highly competitive. Not as competitive as, being an actor or whatever, right? There's hundreds of people that work at each of the studios, but there's only like one actor on the screen. So there's more opportunities as an artist, but like you got to be good, right? So if someone said, you shouldn't be an artist, right? I think you need to get a real job. It is possible that they see your motivation, your drive as a threat to themselves. That happens in some cases, right? If you have people around you that just want to bring each other down and like stay at the, low level of achievement in their life and, just kind of, because then they've got like company, right? Misery needs company. And then they've got somebody who wants to rise up and, no, I'm going to actually get a job. I'm actually going to, improve my stuff. I've heard people that are addicts, they have similar groups of people that, like, if you tell them you want to get clean, it's like, why? You want to be one of them? Huh? People that just go to a normal job and just piss away their life? So it's possible that somebody giving you this feedback as an artist, like you want to be an artist, no, get a real job. It's possible they want to bring you down. But it is also possible that they can see that you've got 3 kids, a mortgage and your wife is working overtime to support everyone because there's no extra money coming in, and they can see yet another endeavor that you want to partake in that is going to take potentially years before you can actually contribute financially to the family, and they want to say, cut the shit and get a real job. Okay? And in one case, you need to ignore them, and in another case, you need to listen to them. Okay? And the difference between them is somebody who wants the best for you and somebody who wants to bring you down. And you won't know until you've spoken to them and heard them out. Say, why don't you want me to? And if it's like, oh, artists are poor and they're starving, and you don't want to be like one of them, they're just like highfalutin, and just it's a stupid industry. Plumbing is a concrete, we've been in the family, we've been in the metal work industry for generations. I don't know what it is. Well, that's someone who's like, yeah, they don't really have the best, there's no reason there. But if it's like, yeah, you keep chasing this dream of doing things, one thing after another. One time it's crypto, then it's, becoming a, multi-level marketing scheme. And we told you it was a multi-level marketing scheme, and you said, no, it's not. The pyramid's flat and whatever. Anyways, so you have to talk to them, hear them out before you'll actually know whether their advice is good. Because, some people really do need some tough talk in their life. They say you can be cruel. I could be cruel and I could lie to you and tell you it's all going to be great. Or I could be a great friend. What's the saying? I could be a great friend and be honest and say, no, it's not going to work, something like that, right? So sometimes some people need tough talk, and it really just depends on who they are. And I'd leave it up to you to figure that out, Toby. Good luck. All right, let's do one more. I was only going to do 3, but this is going to be a short podcast if we do 3. So let's do this one.
Hey, Andrew. This is Nico from Germany. I would like to know, what would you like to be improved in future updates in Blender? Or what are some features that you will like to get in the future? For me, it's a material manager, a proper material manager. That would be great. But other than that, Blender's awesome. Thank you.
Proper material manager. Well, you'll like what Polygon's working on. No. But we're working on this live material library for Blender. It's like an add-on that will pull from the website live and just download materials and organize it. And it's really cool. It's coming out hopefully in a couple of months. But anyways... Okay, your question was, what does Blender need? Okay, if I had some money to throw at Blender and I said, here's $1 million, do this, what would I pick? Well, right now, because it fluctuates always, it always fluctuates. You ask anyone what does Blender need to improve? It's always largely dependent on the last thing that they worked on, because you always hit a limit and you go, why is that? They got to invest in this. That's why you go to a Blender conference and it's just like everyone's like putting up their hand. Ton, I think the thing you need to work on is library overrides. And then I'm sitting next to them going like, library overrides, please. You need particle nodes, obviously, and it's everyone's just working on different things and they're all hitting problems. Right now, I'm working on, with Bill Barber, who works for me, we've been working on it for over a year. Oh, it's painful when you see like the first emails and when it was sent. It was sent like 2 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, we're still working on this. We've been working on a render engine comparison video. So we're comparing V-Ray, Redshift, Arnold, Octane, LuxCore, eCycles, Cycles. Is there any others? Anyways, all the big ones, okay? And we've figured out like 4 tests, subsurface scattering and this thing and whatever. We pit them and we see which ones are slow. And by God, Cycles is slow, okay? I'm going to, spoilers alert for the upcoming video, but Cycles is like, on a median, it's about 6 times as slow as the first completed render engine. As in like if it takes V-Ray a minute to complete it, Blender will on average take 6 minutes. Like, it's way too slow. The worst being volumetrics by far. I think it was like 16 times or something as bad, and especially CPU. If you're a CPU user, guys, I'm really sorry, because you guys have it bad with cycles. It's so slow with the CPU. Oh, it's terrible. But yeah, the rendering engine just, it blows. Okay, so Cycles X, right around the corner. It's going to solve all our problems. It's up to 7 times faster or something. So we're doing some testing. It's like twice as fast, I guess. I mean, that's the thing. It's not out yet. It's going to be out probably 3.1 or something next year or something in the official build. A bunch of changes going to happen to it, but it's got a lot of catching up to do. Let's just say that. So yeah, that and also as a pet peeve, Blender's simulations. The smoke sim, whatever, like, as you might know if you follow me on Twitter or my newsletter, but last year I was working on an explosion tutorial because Blender got this new Manta Flow smoke simulation, right? And I was so excited. I was like, cool, let's do it. And I spent 6 weeks doing bake after bake after bake after bake after bake, bake. And I couldn't figure out what the heck is going on with these settings. It doesn't do what it says it does. And I tweak this thing and then it goes, and I tweak this other thing and it goes, and I'm like, what? That didn't, and you try and go back to what the settings were before, it doesn't work. Discovered after 6 weeks that there's bugs. It was like 4 or 5, 6 bugs that I discovered. Or somebody else had, posted it recently or something like that. And one of them, the most crucial one, is that the adaptive domain, which you need because otherwise it takes 5-6 times as long to bake the thing. Adaptive means that it'll create like a pretend box around the thing, so it'll only simulate within that box and it'll expand with the size of the smoke. Well, it doesn't predict where the smoke is going to go correctly, so the smoke will be expanding and it'll get clipped because the box isn't big enough yet. And so you end up with these lines in the smoke. And I submitted this bug a year and a bit ago, still hasn't been fixed, okay? And the developer in the thread has been saying, is it try it now. And it's like, no, it's still broken. My blend file is attached to the top. You could run it yourself. It's broken. Try it now. I think I fixed it. Nope, still broken. So that's kind of peeved me off, to be honest, because, they released a tool and it's broken. The smoke domain, like, it's the most simple thing. It needs to be fixed. Doesn't work. So I'm waiting on that to do this tutorial, and it's just frustrating that you can't. So it seems like everyone thinks that Blender's got this cool smoke simulator, but it kind of doesn't. It's buggy and it doesn't work enough to do what you need it to. Anyways, let's do another question. Why not? We've got time. Let's do another one.
Hi Andrew, quick question. How do you take notes? How often do you review notes? And what do you consider worth noting? Thanks.
Good question. How do I take notes? I use Evernote personally. Doesn't matter what you use, really. It's just whatever tool happens to work for you. And note taking, I take notes when I have learned something that's kind of like a hard and fast rule that I want to remember. So I've got a little file of, let's have a look at it. Books and learning, talent code, digital painting, education. But yeah, I had like a little file of lessons that I wanted to remember. So for example, one of the lessons was that interpretation is usually the biggest driver in interest for a art piece. What that word salad means is if you just recreate a photo one-to-one, drawing or render, whatever it is, it's possible it's just going to look crap. It's just going to fall flat and stale. Like I was like spending so long trying to get the perspective and the lines and getting proportions right with this thing, and then I'm like, oh, this sucks. Let's bring in the reference photo, and I finally nailed it. Like it actually matched. Like it matched. The nose was where it needed to be, the cheeks were where it needed to be, the head. I got the proportions right, and it still sucked. And I was like, what the heck? And it was because it was almost like a sterile like mathematical drawing. It was just like there was no like life to it. But then, as like a separate exercise, I don't know how many months later, I was doing this what are they called, gesture drawing, where you set like timed sketches on how long you're going to spend doing something. And I was doing these like fast sketches looking at a reference thing. And then at the end of it, like it didn't match the reference, like it didn't look like the person, but the picture looked so much more interesting because the lines had this movement to it. I was not creating a one-to-one, I was interpreting it. Right, my eye was seeing, this smooth face, this smooth feminine face. So this line that's actually got a few lumps and whatever in the reference was now smooth, and there was like this shadow, right, which has a little bit of detail in the shadow, but I just exaggerated and just made it one flat color. So I had interpreted the photo to be something else. And now that I think about it and look at art that does well, things that are interesting, it's when the artist has infused it with interpretation. That's when it's interesting. So that's a note, for example, that I recorded as like, I got to remember that. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I do think note taking is underrated. I don't think enough people do it, because I do it whenever I read a book. As I'm reading a book, I read a lot of nonfiction, business. I read this one on the Talent Code, which talks about how to learn things better, and it's just full of such interesting things that apply to learning art, learning anything, trying to get good at any hobby, the Talent Code. And I was just taking notes, just writing it down in Evernote. I have my Kindle, and then I pick up my phone and I type it out, or iPad, or whatever it is, and that's kind of what I do. I hope that's what you were after there. Mark, I think you're Aussie too, right? What's your accent?
Quick question. How do you take notes?
Yeah, you sound Aussie. That'll work. But anyways, if you've got a question, blenderguru.com/podcast question. Must be a video. You take out your phone, selfie mode. Hey, Andrew, I'm so-and-so from this country. Here's my question. Keep it under 30 seconds if you can, or a minute. And if it's interesting, I'll answer it on the pod. And that's it. And we're going to have some more guests coming up for future podcast episode. I do like the guest episodes because, you don't just get to hear me rambling about the same old stuff. It's other people, and it's fun. So look forward to those coming up. And subscribe to us on all the places you listen to your podcast: Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, all the good places. And again, our sponsor, Polygon. POLIIGON.com. Remember that the next time you're making a scene and you need textures, models, brushes, or HDRs. Thanks for listening, guys. See you in a future episode.